School of Management Studies IGNOU presents an audiobook on the course Mmpc 015 Research Methodology for Management Decisions for MBA program. Presenting Block 2 Data Collection and Measurement, Unit 4 Methods and Techniques of Data Collection.
Objectives. After studying this unit, you should be able to discuss the necessity and usefulness of data collection. 2. Distinguish between primary and secondary data. 3. Describe different methods of collecting primary data with their merits and demerits. 4. Design questionnaire for collection of primary data. 5. Develop skills in conducting interview. 6. Identify the sources of secondary data. And 7. Examine their reliability, suitability, and adequacy of secondary data. Introduction. The increasingly complex nature of business and government has focused attention on the uses of research methodology in solving managerial problems. The credibility of the results derived from the application of such methodology is dependent upon the up-to-date information about the various pertinent characters included in the analysis. To illustrate, the demand of disc record has dropped dramatically after cassettes have entered the market commercially. This information must be taken into consideration for formulating marketing strategy by a dealer selling musical products. Information expressed in appropriate quantitative form are known as data. The necessity and usefulness of information gathering or data collection cannot be overemphasized in government policies. The government must be aware of the actual scenario of the acceptance of family planning before it can formulate any policy in this manner. The components of this scenario are provided by appropriate data to be collected from various families. In industrial disputes regarding wages, cost of living index, a data-based indicator of inflation is often accepted as a guideline for arbitration. In short, neither a business decision nor a governmental decision can be made in a casual manner in the highly involved environment prevailing in this age. It is through appropriate data and their analysis that the decision maker becomes equipped with proper tools of decision making. Primary and secondary data. The primary data are those which are collected afresh and for the first time, and thus happen to be original in character. Such data are published by authorities who themselves are responsible for their collection. The secondary data, on the other hand, are those which are already been collected by some other agency and which have already been processed. Generally, secondary data are information which have previously been collected by some organization to satisfy its own need, but it is being used by the department under reference for an entirely different reason. For example, the census figures are published every 10th year by the Registrar General of India, but the census figures are also used by demographers and other social scientists for planning and research. Thus, the officials of the Department of Registrar General will visualize the census figures as primary data, but a demographer using the same census figures to prepare a mortality table will consider them as secondary data. Even when an organization is interested to collect primary data, it is necessary to take help of various types of secondary data to design a proper sampling scheme. This aspect of the use of secondary data will be covered in the next unit. Methods of collecting primary data. The collection of primary data for business research is of paramount importance to assist management in making decisions. Generally, information regarding a large number of characteristics are necessary to analyze any problem pertaining to management. For instance, a study relating to employment in rural areas require data on income, wages, types of crop, and land holdings. The collection of primary data thus requires a great deal of deliberation and expertise. Depending upon the nature of information necessary, the following methods of collecting primary data are available. 1. Observation method. The investigator collects the requisite information personally through observation. For example, in order to study the conditions of student residing in a university, the investigator meets the student in their hostels and collects necessary data after a personal study. The information about the extent of damage caused by natural calamities like flood can be collected by personal observation by a trained investigator. As the investigator is solely responsible for collection of data by this method, his training, skill, and knowledge play an important role on the quality of primary data. A slight variation of this procedure is indirect oral investigation, where data are collected through indirect sources. Persons who are likely to have information about the problem are interrogated, and on the basis of their answers, primary data become available. Most of the Commission of Inquiry or committees appointed by government collect primary data by this method. The accuracy of the primary data collected by this method depends largely upon the type of persons interviewed, and hence, these persons have to be selected very carefully. 2. Questionnaire method. A popular and common method of collection of primary data is by personally interviewing individuals, recording their answers in a structured questionnaire. The complete enumeration of Indian decennial census is performed by this method. The enumerators visit the dwellings of individuals and put questions to them which elicit the relevant information about the subject of inquiry. This information is recorded in the questionnaire. Occasionally, a part of the questionnaire is unstructured so that the interviewee can feel free to share information about intimate matters with the interviewer. As the data are collected by the field staff personally, it is also known as personal interview method. Much of the accuracy of the collected data, however, depends on the ability and tactfulness of investigators, who should be subjected to special training as to how they should elicit the correct information through friendly discussions. 3. Mailed questionnaire method. A set of questions relevant to subject of inquiry are mailed to a selected list of persons with a request to return them duly filled in. Supplementary instructions regarding the definitions of terms used and the methods of filling up the forms should also accompany the questionnaire. This method can only be used when the respondents are literate and can answer the questions in writing. The question should be very clear, without any ambiguity, keeping in mind that there is no investigator to help the respondent. The method of collecting data by mailing the questionnaires to the respondents is most extensively employed in various business and economic surveys. This method saves both time and cost and can cover a large area. The absence of an investigator, however, renders the responses less reliable. The method also suffers from a large degree of non-response. 4. Telephone interview. This method of collecting information consists in contacting respondents on telephone itself. This method is inexpensive but limited in scope, as respondents must possess a telephone. The telephone interview method is used in industrial surveys, especially in developed regions. Merits and demerits of different methods of collecting primary data. The conditions under which data are to be obtained will predetermine the method of data collection. If a relatively few items of information are sought quickly, covering a number of industries and funds, are limited telephone interviews should be recommended for collection of data. If depth interviews and probing techniques are to be employed, it is necessary to employ investigators to collect data. Thus, each method has its uses and none is superior in all situations. The joint use of more than one data collection method is sometimes preferred for a variety of reasons. When a wide geographic area is being covered, the use of mail questionnaires supplemented by personal interviews will yield more reliable results than either method alone. Designing a questionnaire. A questionnaire is a proforma containing a sequence of questions to elicit information from the interviewees. The questionnaire is used for personal interview. At the same time, the questionnaire is also mailed to individuals who are requested to write the answers against each question and to return the completed proforma by post. The questionnaire is the heart of the primary data collection technique. Hence, its drafting requires utmost skill. The questions must be clear, simple, and to the point. They must be well organized from the point of view of the respondent and be formulated in such a manner as to provide the data in so far as possible in the desired form. This is especially true for a mail questionnaire, which essentially has to speak for itself. If it is not clear, not only the replies may be vague and of little value, but many potential respondents may not bother returning the questionnaire at all. A questionnaire may be said to possess three main aspects. 1. The general form. The form of a questionnaire will depend partly on the type of data being sought and partly on the data collection method to be used. The choice lies between two extremes. On the one hand, there is the highly structured questionnaire, in which all questions and answers are specified and continents in the respondent's own words are held to a minimum. At the other end is the unstructured questionnaire, in which the interviewer is provided with general brief on the sort of information to be obtained, but the exact question is largely his or her own responsibility. The unstructured questionnaires are useful in carrying out in-depth interviews where the aim is to probe for attitudes and reasons. They may also be effectively employed in pretesting, the result of which can be used as a basis for constructing a structured questionnaire at a later stage. Thus, in order to ascertain the expectation of the television viewers about a program interview may be conducted with unstructured questionnaire. The resulting range of answers may then be used to prepare a structured questionnaire for use in the main part of the study. The main disadvantage with any unstructured questionnaire is that it requires personal interview. It cannot be used in the mailed questionnaire method of data collection. A structured questionnaire usually has fixed alternative answers to each question. They are simple to administer and relatively inexpensive to analyze. The questionnaires have, however, their limitations. It is not possible to record the responses made by the respondent in their own words. They are considered inappropriate in investigations where the aim happens to be to probe for attitudes and feelings. 2. The question sequence. The introduction to the questionnaire should be as short and simple as possible. The introductory letter accompanying the mailed questionnaire should also be made very brief. The introduction lays the foundation for establishing the rapport with the respondent in addition to making the interview possible. Once the rapport is established, the questions will generally seek substantive information of value to the study. As a general rule, questions that you put too great a strain on the memory or the intellect should be reserved till later. Likewise, questions relating to personal wealth and personal character should be avoided in the beginning. Following the opening phase should come the questions that are really vital to the interview. Even here, substantive questions should be surrounded by more interesting ones in order that the attention does not slip. Awkward questions, which create the risk that the respondent may discontinue the interview, are usually neglected toward the end. By the time the interview has been terminated, some information is already available with the interviewer. Ideally, the question sequence should confirm the correspondent's way of thinking, and this is where unstructured interviews are highly advantageous. The interviewer can rearrange the order of the questions to fit the discussion in each particular case. With structured questionnaire, the best that can be done is to determine with pretesting the question sequence, which is likely to produce good rapport with most people. 3. The question wording. It has been stated that the question wording and formulation are more of an art than a science. Science does enter, however, in testing the stability and the adequacy of replies for business and management decisions. The wording of the question should be impartial so as not to give a biased picture of the true state of affairs. Colorful adjectives and undue descriptive phrases should be avoided. In general, the question should be worded such that A. They are easily understood, B. They are simple, C. They are concrete and conform to respondents' way of thinking. Multiple choice questions constitute the basis of a structured questionnaire, particularly in a mailed questionnaire method. But in addition to these questions, various open-ended questions are generally inserted to provide a more complete picture of the respondent's feeling and attitudes. Pretesting a questionnaire. The pre-test is a valuable indicator of the effectiveness of a questionnaire to collect data. The pre-testing of a questionnaire consists in selecting approaching and interviewing a small segment in the same manner to be followed in the full-scale operation, and then analyzing the results in the light of the objectives of the study. We can understand from the pretest whether the replies provide the type of information needed or whether the respondents are misinterpreting any of the questions. In addition, results obtained in a pretest can at times suggest new ideas or hypotheses worthy of further examination. If a pretest indicates any change of importance, a further pretest may be warranted to review the questionnaire. Thus, the mere fact that the wording of a question originally misunderstood has been changed does not of itself ensure the clarity of the new form. A few interviews with the new question form are highly desirable. Pretests are sometimes conducted in an informal manner. Editing of primary data. Editing involves reviewing the data collected by investigators to ensure maximum accuracy and unambiguity. It should be done as soon as possible after the data have been collected. If the size of the data is relatively small, it is desirable that only one person edit all the data for the entire study. The different steps of editing are: 1. Checking legibility. Obviously, the data must be legible to be used. If a response is not presented clearly, the concerned investigator should be asked to rewrite it. 2. Checking completeness. An omitted entry on a full structured questionnaire may mean that no attempt was made to collect data from the respondent or that the investigator simply did not record the data. If the investigator did not record the data, prompt editing and questioning of the investigator may provide the missing item. If an entry is missing because of the first possible cause, there is not much that can be done, except to make another attempt to get the missing data. Obviously, this requires knowing why the entry is missing. 3. Checking consistency. The editor should examine each questionnaire to check inconsistency or inaccuracy, if any, in the statement. The income and expenditure figures may be unduly inconsistent. The age and the date of birth may disagree. The area of an agricultural plot may be unduly large. The concerned investigator should be asked to make the necessary corrections. If there is any repetitive response pattern in the reports of individual investigators, they may represent investigator bias or perhaps attempted dishonesty. Techniques of interview. The general qualities that an interviewer should possess can be identified as extroversion, impartiality to different points of view, friendliness without getting personal, ability to remain calm under many different circumstances, consciousness, perseverance, accuracy of reporting, and adaptability. In addition, the interviewer must plan in advance and should fully know the problem under consideration. He must choose a suitable time and place so that the interviewee may feel at ease during the interview. In order to establish proper rapport, especially in the rural areas, if a significant part of the respondents are women, female interviewer must be employed to obtain the responses. If the language of the questionnaire is English, translation in the regional languages must be available so that the interviewer has no ambiguity about the questions. While collecting data regarding various industrial problems, the interviewer should proceed very cautiously and systematically, as the success of his or her project would depend entirely on the cooperation of the others. The interviewer is also expected to be familiar with all the material already published by the organization. In an administrative hierarchy, it is preferable to begin interviews by contacting the officials at the middle and lower levels and to collect all relevant material available with them. The selection, training, and supervision of the interviewers are very important administrative functions for collection of reliable data. Collection of secondary data. Secondary data are data which have been collected and analyzed by some other agency. The sources of secondary data could be: 1. Various publications of central, state, and local governments. The important official publications are Statistical Abstract, India Annual Monthly Abstract of Statistics, Indian Agricultural Statistics, Index Number of Wholesale Prices in India. 2. Various publications of foreign governments or of international bodies. The important publications are publications of international bodies like UNO, FAO, WHO, UNESCO, ILO, Statistical Yearbook, Yearbook of Labor Statistics. The secondary data provided by such publications are authentic, but along with other things, one must be especially careful about the units in respect of currency, weight, etc., which greatly vary from one country to another. 3. Journals of Trade, Commerce, Economics, Engineering, etc., published by responsible trade associations. Chambers of Commerce provide secondary data in respect of some important items. Some examples of this kind of publication are Annual Report of the Chief Inspector of Mines in India and Indian Textiles Bulletin. 4. The other sources of secondary data are books, magazines and newspapers, reports prepared by various universities, historical documents, diaries, letters, unpublished biographies and autobiographies. Scrutiny of secondary data. Primary data are to be scrutinized after the questionnaires are completed by the interviewers. Likewise, the secondary data are to be scrutinized before they are compiled from the source. The scrutiny should be made to assess the suitability, reliability, adequacy, and accuracy of the data to be compiled and to be used for the purpose study. 1. Suitability. The compiler should satisfy himself or herself that the data contained in the publication will be suitable for his or her study. In particular, the conformity of the definitions, units of measurement, and time frame should be checked. For example, 1 US gallon is different from 1 British gallon. 2. Reliability. The reliability of the secondary data can be ascertained from the collecting agency, mode of collection, and the time of collection. For instance, secondary data collected by a voluntary agency with unskilled investigators are unlikely to be reliable. 3. Adequacy. The source of data may be suitable and reliable, but the data may not be adequate for the proposed inquiry. The original data may cover a bigger or narrower geographical region, or the data may not cover suitable periods. For instance, per capita income of Pakistan prior to 1971 is inadequate for reference during the subsequent periods as it became separated into two different countries with considerable variation in standard of living. 4. Accuracy. The user must be satisfied about the accuracy of the secondary data, the process of collecting raw data, the reproduction of processed data in the publication. The degree of accuracy desired and achieved should also be satisfactory and acceptable to the researcher. Summary. The pattern of business and industry in the present-day environment has become quite complex and involved due to a variety of reasons. Any meaningful decision to be made in this context must be objective and fact-based in nature. This is achieved by collecting and analyzing appropriate data. Data may broadly be divided into two categories, namely primary and secondary data. The primary data are those which are collected for the first time by the organization which is using them. The secondary data, on the other hand, are those which have already been collected by some other agency but also can be used by the organization under consideration. Primary data may be collected by observation, oral investigation, questionnaire method, or by telephone interviews. Questionnaires may be used for data collection by interviewers. They may also be mailed to prospective respondents. The drafting of a good questionnaire requires utmost skill. The process of interviewing also requires a great deal of tact, patience, and competence to establish rapport with the respondent. Secondary data are available in various published and unpublished documents. The suitability, reliability, adequacy, and accuracy of the secondary data should, however, be ensured before they are used for research problems.
You were listening to the audiobook by the School of Management Studies IGNOU for MBA program. Course code Mmpc 015 Research Methodology for Management Decisions. Course Coordinator Dr. Venkataya Chittipaka, Associate Professor from School of Management Studies IGNOU. Voiceover by Renuka. Edited by Savita. Program assisted by Tarannum Jahan and Jagbandhu Jana. Program produced by Dr. Manoj Kumar Singh. This program was brought to you by Electronic Media Production Center of Indira Gandhi National Open University.